Today is January 25th. I'm Kelly Guo. I'm here today with Miss Ling, and on behalf of Houston Asian American Archive at Rice University. So let's start with the very beginning of your story. Um, what's your name and where and when you were born?
My name is Qiqing. I was born in Guangdong province in China in 1991.
And thank you. How would you describe the household you grew up in?
Mm. Uh, my parents. I have a younger sister who's 1.5 years younger than me, and then my my dad used to work in construction, and my mom was a full-time housewife. When I say full-time, like she's like not just taking care of me and my sister, but also like a few cousins who stayed with us when we were growing up. So she's like very busy. Yeah. And we also lived with my grandma for many years until she passed away. Mm.
Okay, thank you. And can you share one of the most memorable childhood memory?
Childhood memory. Um, I think I had a pretty happy childhood in general, like while at home. And I like grew up with a lot of other kids, like cousins. For example, I remember um, when I was small, we lived with my uncle's family, so my dad's brother, and they had a daughter. So it's like me, my sister, and the cousin who's like of similar age. Like three of us would like always play together, and there was a wooden door in the living room that after dinner, like three of us would just like, use chalk to paint, like to draw on it directly. And the adults that don't care, they would like just give us a wet cloth, and then we would wipe everything. So we would draw butterflies, like flowers, houses, like this kind of kid stuff on the store. So we use it kind of like as a drawing board. Yeah.
Thank you. And where do you reside now?
Mm. Oh, I live in New York City now.
Okay. Um, like when did you move to the US and what prompted you to do so?
Mm. I moved in the summer of 2021. I used to like work in Shanghai for 5 years, and then I moved to New York because I was going to do a master degree in textile in the Parsons School of Design in New York.
Did your family move with you or just you?
Oh no, it was just me. Yeah.
What are some like challenges when you first arrived in the US?
Uh, yeah. At first, it was pretty hard, like because everything is very different. Um, For example, I had a really hard time finding apartments in New York City. I had no idea it was like so competitive. Like you need to, it's almost like job application. You need to have like a cover letter to and credit score, this kind of thing. And as an international student, I had like no credit history, so it was very difficult, like looking for apartments. Um, but I was very fortunate in the end with help to find a place I really like. Um, yeah, in general, I would say that it's very different, like daily life. Like for example, I was uh, like I would be upset like if the train wouldn't arrive on time, which is like very different in Shanghai. Because in Shanghai, when you're taking the subway, you just don't need to check the schedule because there are like one train every 3 minutes or something. Uh, but when I like first came to New York, I was like following Google and I was like, well, why this train is not coming? So small things like that. Um, yeah.
So is that like a cultural shock you experienced?
A cultural shock.
Yeah.
Uh, I would say like the maybe in school, like I would feel it's very different that people are in general very generous with compliments. That's a big uh cultural shock. Because I feel like in general, like maybe in China, people are more reserved. But when um, like when we had critiques in the master program, that the faculties are very positive when giving feedback, even though I feel like apparently sometimes the work is not that good. Like most of the faculties would say like nice things to you, and maybe in the end they will say a little bit of criticism, like things that you can improve, but they phrase it in a very careful way, as if it's not right to do so. Um, well, I feel like it's um, related to the private school, like education style, that maybe the teachers who give um, tough feedback are not most popular teachers. So they have their like pressure in their evaluation system. But I feel like just in general, like people are like tell you very nice things. Your work is amazing, and I keep this in mind that like yeah, don't believe in all the compliments that people give.
So once you moved to US, how did you keep touch with your family?
Through WeChat. Yeah, we would like uh do video call once a week, and sometimes I would send photos that I'm doing in the group chats. I think most of the like Chinese students would have like a group chat with the family, like the happy family, like titles, like something like that.
So I know you were in journalism before you pursued MFA in New York.
Right.
How did you decide on journalism as a major? Did your interest like develop in high school, or is it just like a interest you developed in college and decide to major in journalism?
Mm. Uh, at, I studied journalism in my undergrad in Wuhan University in China, and it was in high school, like like the at the college entrance exam, like afterwards, I need to like decide what majors I want to study, and it was not very clear to me. So at first, I actually wanted to study advertising, and because they put advertising and journalism under the School of Communication, so all the students would like take introduction classes, and then in the second year, we decide what kind of majors you want to study. So I actually went to the School of Communication thinking that, oh, I want to study advertising because I don't know, I didn't actually know much about advertising. I just, like watch Hong Kong television and think that it's really cool, like it's a fun job. But when I actually like study like for the first year, and then the professors like teaching journalism, they're super boring. Like they have that because they didn't really work in journalism to just like tell you like theories how it works, and then the professors who taught journalism are way more interesting. We're talking about not just theories but also like history and critical thinking and everything. So I guess the first year I just like got attracted by teachers in journalism, and yeah, and decided to study journalism.
Is there like a specific professor that inspired you to go to journalism? Can you like recall any specific moments?
Hmm. For journalism, I would say, as I mentioned, like the first year, like we would um, do all kind of introduction classes, um, and the dean of journalism at the time, her name is Xiaqong, and so she like taught us the introduction to journalism class, I think, and then she just like said that like don't. She basically said don't spend too much time in School of Journalism, and asked us to can like go to audit like other classes like philosophy and history and politics in the university. Um, yeah, so I feel like she's very direct and honest to students, and yeah.
And did you participate in any like clubs or organizations during your undergrad?
Mm. Um, hmm. There were a few, and there was one like reading club thing that I joined. It's not like strictly like a reading club, but more it's like I don't think it's like a registered group in the university, you know. It's like a very like informal, like casual group of people who sometimes want to like organize events, like to like watch a movie, an old one that's not in the theater, or like invite people to come to give a speech, and sometimes you would like have like dinner together and just talk about things. Yeah, I feel like it's um the way for me at the time to know other people. Like in other majors, it's like people can come from like all different kinds of backgrounds. There are like maybe 10 of us or something. People come and go. But it was like a window to um, get to know these people with similar mindset, like liberal, like into culture and arts. Um, yeah, and use VPN like to know what's going on um, in the news and history, like that kind of thing.
Okay. And does your exchange experience at Nanyang Technological University kind of like change your educational goal or like career goal?
Mm, I would say I always wanted to like study abroad, and then at the time there was the exchange program available. I can do it's either Hong Kong or Singapore. The exchange program is for 1 semester. Actually, I wanted to go to Hong Kong, but that year they only have um, the program in Singapore. I was like, okay, yeah, sure, Singapore, it's fine. And my experience there was it it was it was pretty good in general, and I think it's like the first time that I really well study an environment that's like taught in English, and then the I feel like it's like almost it feels like real education for the first time because I like in the university that I study in China, it was, you know, like it's a pretty good university. It's like one of the top 10 universities, but I feel like the administration system is a mess, and um like some of the classes are really like not well organized. You know, like you can feel that the teachers didn't put much time into it. And yeah, but the classes that I took in Singapore, it's like you have like smaller groups of students, like 20 something students in the class, so you can have real discussion with other people and the teacher, and the quality of teaching is like so much higher. Um, yeah, so I guess that was like the moment that convinced me that okay, I should do like another degree abroad to study. Yeah.
Why did you pick Parsons in particular? Is there any like part that maybe interested you the most?
Uh, so at the time, like I already worked as a journalist for 5 years, and then I know that it's not going to be something that I can do forever because the political climate is like changing a lot in China, and was like getting more and more difficult to interview people, go on reporting trips, and write articles. So I know that, okay, I need to pick something else to do in my life. And but I didn't know like what it was at the time. I only know that, okay, um, I like to draw, I like to make things with my hands. So I want to like look for something that I can like keep making, like make something. And then I did some research and talked to people and realized, oh, there's like a textile major that exists. I didn't even know that it was a thing, textile. And then I spent a year taking online class from a teacher and preparing portfolio and then researching schools. I actually applied like most of the schools in Europe, but they didn't accept me because I feel like in Europe in general they have a stricter requirements, like what you should have done this and that, how many credits in undergrads, and I feel like in the United States it's maybe more open, especially the Parsons MFA textile program because it was a relatively new program. It was founded in 2018, and the philosophy of this program was like, oh, we're gonna welcome students from all different kinds of background and put them together and see what's going to happen. So I was like very happy that they uh, took me in the end, accepted me to like. So the first year it would be like study all the like introduction classes to learn to weave, to knit, to do natural dyeing, to do 3D printing, like these kind of things. So it was very this program like actually fits me like well for someone like me, not coming from that textile or fashion background. Yeah.
Okay. And
Mm.
when you were taking like textile classes, did you see enough Asian representation in the classes?
Oh yeah, there was like a lot of Asian in my class. I would say so there like around 25 people in my year, my cohort, and then maybe five or six more, a bit more than that are Chinese, and then also like a third students were Indian, and then the like United States and the rest of the world. So yeah, that's a it's like almost like half of the students are Asian in my class, I would say. Yeah.
Okay. Is there any like professors or mentors that left an impact on you during your time in Parsons?
Um, I learned from a lot of professors in the program, like they um, like taught me how to really like to begin to do everything, like how to do hand spinning, how to set up a loom, and everything. Um, the teacher that left the most impression, I would say maybe it was during the atelier program. So it's actually not like a faculty at Parsons. So we have these uh, 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 class or program called atelier. It's basically an internship that we would go to either a company or artist studio 1 day a week to work there, to learn there. And then I was like working with a textile artist, and her name is Samantha Bittman. She's a weaver. She has a weaving school in Catskill in upstate New York, and also like a studio in Brooklyn. Yeah, so I would like she would like teach me how to weave, and then we would like weave teaching samples for other textile students who would come to like learn weaving in her studio. And I think it was a really nice experience because I can like spend a lot of time observing how a professional artist work and live. And then she's a very nice person. Like she would give me advice, like how to do, like how to make it work as a textile person, as an artist. So I think like that was um, yeah, one of the marks that I was really grateful for to have when I was in school. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And I know you say you were looking for something new when you were like choosing the MFA program. You also been like you're a journalist for a really long time. So did you look at the MFA like textile program as like a temporary gateway, or are you looking for like something like a new like a permanent change?
Mm. Yeah, I was more looking for a permanent change because I feel like when I was doing journalism, I don't feel that's something that I want to do forever. And I feel like people like do journalism for different reasons, and some people like it's a way to interact with the society, like to travel and talk to people. And some people did journalism because they want to be a writer, so it's like completely different purpose. And I feel like for me, it was more the first one because as someone just got out of school, I wanted to know what's happening, and then to be a journalist was really like a very efficient way to be out there and know what's happening and be on site and talk to people. And it was um it's experience that like forced me to grow like quickly. Um, but it's not something that I feel like I want to do forever, especially when um, I feel like the first few years when I started as a journalist, it was still possible to cover a lot of stories and to travel. And I basically like witnessed the rapid decline of the freedom of speech, and there was like fewer and fewer things, and then interviewees are under stress. Like if they, especially like the last job I had was in a New York Times Shanghai bureau, so it was um, sometimes the interviewees are under pressure, like should I use my name and what's going to happen if I talk to foreign media? And I totally understand their concern. And sometimes if they say too much, I would be like, are you sure that is it okay? So I feel like it was not like in a normal uh, society. Like that's not how journalism should work. Um, and I feel like this situation is going to last for a long time. So just for my own like mental health and career development, I feel like okay, I need to do something else. Yeah. And uh yeah, was that the question? Sorry, I kind of like
Yeah, 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 yeah,
got
yeah.
lost there.
And thank you so much for the details. And you
Yeah,
also
no problem.
described taking like the subway in China to work as an animal without a skin. Like, could you elaborate on that a bit?
What was the question? Sorry.
So you described like taking the subway in China to work as like
Yeah.
an animal without a skin. Could you elaborate on this a bit? Like, how is it different from like taking subway in New York?
Oh, did I say that? Or it was
Oh,
in a
it was
previous
like
interview
it
thing?
was from an interview.
Oh yeah, 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 I remember. Yeah. Um, I feel like that was my mental situation. Uh, maybe the last few years when I was in Shanghai. It was, I mean, Shanghai was like an okay city, I would say. If you're just like having a life there, like they have good restaurants and the streets are pretty, um, a lot of coffee shops. So if you want to have like a nice life, it's in theory it's possible. Um, but I guess it's partly because I was doing journalism, so I was more exposed to the like negative sides of the society, and also I'm just like more sensitive to these kind of things. Um, so there was like a kind of frustration and anger uh, that I carried with me all the time when I was in Shanghai. And yeah, I would describe my feeling as when I was like walking the street in Shanghai that I was ready to fight. Like if a stranger came up to me and like provoke something, that I'm ready. Like what do you want to say to me? So and I noticed like um my mindset was like that. It wasn't very healthy. I was like, okay, I need to move somewhere else, like otherwise I can't leave like that.
Okay, thank you. And What would you say is the biggest difference from like telling a story from like text and telling a story from like textile?
Hmm. Um, I feel like when I was doing journalism, like telling the stories with words, it's other people's story because that's how the format works, right? You have an idea and then you travel somewhere, you talk to people, and you write an article. Um, so of course there's like some personal thing there because you pick the theme, the story based on your interests. Um, well, also because of the editors. Um, but I feel like most of the time it's still, about what you care, what you feel strongly about, and then you would do that kind of stories that speak to you. But it's still like other people's story. And I feel like in textile in arts that it's more direct. It's like what I want to do, what I want to say, what materials I want to use. So it's not about other people anymore. Now it's like I need to dig into my past, like my own stories, and to tell the story in textile. So I'm still doing the transition, and I feel like I'm very fortunate to have the opportunity to do it, to be able to do it. And
Okay, and I know in a video you talk about how weaving can help you to release anger. And can you also elaborate on that a bit more? And did you also see art as a way of like embracing happiness?
mm, uh, yeah, the releasing anger thing, I think um, it come from my experience, like working as a journalist and living in China for years. There was a lot of frustration there and things that I couldn't um, like release um, through my work at the time. So it was like building up, keep building up for so many years. And then finally, I think when I was in at the master program, that I learned these techniques to 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 draw like with line, with yarn, and to weave images out. So I feel like I was given the tools little by little um to to take these anger out, like these feelings out of me, so I can like weave it on the loom and like to think of stories that I wanted to tell that I feel very strongly about, but I didn't have the chance to do so. Um, yeah, I feel like it's especially like weaving. I really like it a lot. Uh, like it's. I feel like on the one side, I was fascinated with the loom and weaving because it's a very old craft. So there's a lot of like history and culture behind that. It's a the loom. It's a machine that you can find in so many different cultures, primitive cultures, and it just all developed across the world. So it was like, like I think it's a human instinct thing to make cloth just intersecting the warp and weft. It's very natural for a person to think of that, to think of the way to build cloth. So that part is like already like very fascinating. I like to read books about like old looms and how it works and that part of the world. And it's also has become like a contemporary art medium, which is relatively new. So there was this fiber movement in the United States in the 60s that, because like weaving and textile used to be seen as a woman's work, and, in the household, not important at all. And then in the 60s, it started to seen as, oh, we can actually use textile, use weaving to make artwork. So it opens up all the possibilities. And so I feel I can also um, like relate to that period, that it's not just woman's work anymore. Like it's not um, just something you have like a hobby at home anymore. Then you can use this tool to say what you want to say, like as an artist.
Does your weaving method have anything to do with like the Chinese tradition of weaving?
Mm. Oh, the Chinese tradition, I've never woven in China. I think the loom, they look a bit like different. The I've seen the loom in Qiandongnan, so in Guizhou, it's like a much older version, like very big, and it's not like the looms at home that I would see in United States. It's like manufactured by these brands, so it's more like a modern design, so it's more compact, so you can fit it in your house or apartment. Um, yeah, and so yeah, I would like uh, to visit places in China where people weave, like to weave on the loom or backstrap weaving, because I feel like that part is still like missing. Yeah, I learned weaving in in United States. I feel like I'm more familiar with the setup, like the tools, like the way the yarn that people use here.
Okay, on your website, I think you also mentioned how you use like these papers, hands-bound paper and natural
Mm,
dyes in your artworks. Like, why did you choose these materials specifically?
mm. Yeah, so the paper part, it was um so when I in the first year in my master program, I was like trying all different kinds of weird materials. So I was like looking for some kind of material that can provide support to weavings, because usually like weavings is flat. And then I was like thinking, can I do something with it? So I've tried like all kinds of materials, like elastic yarn, like wood structure, metal, uh, and in the end, paper worked for me because uh, it's not that it's not as like hard as metal, so you can still like mold it and bend it, and it has very subtle structure. And then the first big piece that I made with handspun paper yarn was that um, I spun like calligraphy paper and newspaper and print paper, and then I wove like a big piece. It's like I think like around 3 yards long, and then I folded it in like an origami way. And so the experiment was like to see if I can like weave a big piece of paper and fold it like a big piece of paper and to see if the shape would stay. And then it was the only way to find out was to do it, but it was like a lot of work to do the spinning and weaving and everything. I was very like stressed at the time, like I hope it's going to work. And then in the end, yeah, it worked. So I feel like wow, this material is really magical. I can do so many different things with it. I can paint on it, I can dye it, I can spin it, and like add little like pieces while I'm spinning. So I feel like it's a material with a lot of possibilities that I'm still like discovering, like how to play with it. Yeah, my cat my cat is with me the whole time on my lap.
Oh,
Hi.
hello, so
I'm
cute.
gonna say hi.
Uh,
Okay, he's biting my finger now. Hi.
um,
Okay, you wanna stay? Okay, you wanna stay. All right.
okay. So let's go on to talk about your experience in Houston. Um,
Okay.
how did you hear about Houston Center for Contemporary Art?
Hmm. Yeah, so it's a pretty well-known residency in the field of craft and art. And then I know a few people that I follow on Instagram that they did the residency a while back, a few years ago, and it seems they like all had a pretty good experience. And so I applied like spring last year, and it passed the interview, and yeah, decided to go in to do a 3-month residency in the fall. Oh, can you hear me? Is that okay?
Okay. Yes, I'm so sorry. My Zoom
Is that
got
okay?
it. Okay, I think it's good now. I'm sorry. Can you like can you elaborate on your experience at Houston? Like what did you do and what are you studying and what materials did you like like play with?
Mm. Yeah, so when I arrived in Houston for the residency, there were four artists, like each cohort, and then each of us were given a studio space at the craft center. So we would have like around 20 square meters. I don't know what is it in feet, square feet. Studio, like white walls, like concrete wall with a sink. It was like completely empty, so it's like fresh start and whatever you want to do there. And then so I had a 8 shaft loom and a spinning wheel there. Thanks a lot to the help of the local hand weavers guild. Because I was like concerned, like as a weaver, that it's a bit hard to travel with all the equipment. And then I talked to a former resident artist. Her name is Margot Becker. She's also a weaver. She did a residency there, and she told me that yeah, I should be in touch with the Hand Weavers Guild because they have a guild house and then very nice people, and then they could probably like lend you the equipment. Yeah, so yeah, so I met these like very nice ladies at the guilds, and then got the equipment, got set up, and yeah, started to experiments in both in hand spinning and weaving. And I think the fact that I have like a nice spinning wheel that it helped a lot because the equipment matters in a way that when I was in school, the spinning wheel was a Louet brand. It's like a Dutch brand that it's a wheel that would pull very hard. So I can like spin fast, but it doesn't really work well for the yarn that I work with. It's like paper, so it's really fragile. Uh, so I can only like spin like pretty thick ones on that one on that wheel, and then the spinning wheel that I use in Houston, it's a Landrum brand, Scotch tension, so it's like a different system that I can spin like very delicate yarn on this wheel. I can do it in like a slower way, and then it also like the wheel was built like with an angle, so I can like see what's happening on the bobbin more clearly. So it gives me more like a better view to see because I'm spinning like not in a very traditional way. And then the yarn's like thicker, so I need to pay attention to what's happening in there so the yarn won't get stuck. Uh, yeah, so I like make a lot of like paper yarn samples with different paper thickness ways of spinning. Um, yeah, I had a good time um, to have the time and space to work and make yarn samples, make weaving samples, and to concentrate. Because I feel like it's always hard to continue to make as a like professional artist because there's like a lot of happening in life and like after graduation like my other friends in school like they get a job so it's like a different lifestyle like it's hard to like keep making your work while you have a job and so I feel like it was I was very lucky to have the time to have a studio and just to concentrate like making for 3 months. Yeah.
Thank you. And how is it different from like your experience as an artist in New York?
Mm. uh well, I feel like in New York I don't have that much experience yet because I just graduated like last summer, so I'm still trying to make it work. I'm like applying for other residencies in the city and hopefully something will work out. If not, I'm going to like find a studio myself. One thing I would say that um, Houston has a lot of space, and I can tell from the size of work that people make. It's I remember like at the craft center they have a show, and it was like an artist who make these like giant sculptures what is it like cost like things that you would wear in an amusement park like that kind of costume it was huge. I'm kind of like, where are you going to store it? So I feel like I have these like people living in New York mindset that, like I feel like in the past I used to make like a little bit of like baskets weaving, basketry, like that kind of 3D sculptures. And then I realized I have no space to store these kind of things. So I decided, okay, I need to do tapestries. It's only like, 2D, I can just roll it up. Yeah, I feel like the sense of space is quite different, like comparing Houston and New York City. And in Houston, when I walk in the street, it's very open, like a lot of green, and a lot of cars, big space, and I feel like I visited some like art spaces, artist studios in Houston, and that's my feeling that, oh, it's so much easier and cheaper to keep a studio running, like as an artist. I feel like, yeah, it's much harder to do it in New York City where everything is much expensive.
Okay.
Mm.
You. And looking ahead, what are your aspirations as a textile artist? And are there like any specific themes or project that you're eager to like create or explore in the future?
The future plans. Yeah, I'm working on a new series, like working with actually dye paper and tapestries. I feel like it's based on the samples, experiments that I made in Houston that I'm going to like make it bigger and more elaborate. So this is the what I'm working on right now. And longer in the future, I would say that um, I'm still figuring out. I'm not sure what's going to happen in a year or so. Um, yeah, like many things are still unclear to me. But one thing that I know for sure, because of my experience in Houston, that I know that I love making in the studio. I love working like in the studio. So I'm going to make it work. I'm going to try um to keep a practice in the studio and keep making. Yeah. I remember visiting a studio, artist studio in Mother Dog. I don't know if you know this space. It's like a like an artist space in Houston. And then I think in the past it used to be like a factory or something. So it's like it was perfect to turn into like maybe around 20 like rooms for artists. And then um there was an artist like she would make like drawings and then mosaics in, in class. And she's been working like for 20 something years. Her name is Liz. And I was like asking her, how did you make it work? Like basically, how did you do it? Because I'm very curious, like how can you work as a professional artist? And she told me that she used to have a full-time job at a advertising company in Houston, and then she would like go back to work in the studio during lunch breaks and after work. I was like, wow, like you have there's so much energy. And advice that she gave me was trying to find the highest paying job that you don't care and keep making. So I feel like, okay, that's one way to go. And I definitely want to keep making, and I will see how the first part would work out for me.
Okay, thank you so much. And
Yeah, no problem.
move on a bit. Can you tell us a little bit more about your family?
Hmm. Oh, any specific questions or?
Like, how did you meet your spouse?
Okay. My partner we met in Shanghai. We used to work together in a news website in Shanghai, and he's still a news editor. And he's Dutch and speaks like very good Chinese. Yeah, so we now live together in New York with our cats. Mm.
So did he like move to the US with you?
Yeah, we decided to move together, And
Uh,
also New York is a place to do journalism as well.
and where is your sibling? Is he still in China or like working elsewhere?
Mm. Yeah, my younger sister, she's still in Guangdong province, so in my hometown. Like she works there. Yeah. It's nice to have her in Zhongshan. So like like she would like take my parents for dim sum during the weekends, and I feel like because I'm the one who's far away, so I couldn't do that. So I feel like she's doing most of the family responsibility parts.
And how do you envision your own role within your family as you move like forward in life?
My role in my family. Do you mean like relationship with my parents or more?
Um, Maybe just like how do you see your role in your family right now and what would it change in the future or would it stay the same?
Hmm. You mean like my family as me and my partner, or more like me and my parents that
More like your
uh,
parents and
hmm, hmm. I feel like with my parents that I'm always away. Because I went to boarding school when I was 13 years old, starting from middle school. So I feel like I've been away from home for many years. Like most of my lifetime, I was away from home. And when I was in boarding school, I only like went back home once every 2 or even 3 weeks. It was like kind of crazy at the time. So much time, like even weekends we need to like work and study. Um, yeah, so I feel like with my parents that I'm always away and they're okay with it. They don't really understand what I'm doing in general. But when I told them that I want to do a master degree in textile, they were like, they had no idea what it is. They have no idea what textile is, what art is. Um, but they still supported me because I think it's always a good thing to get a degree, like, to study. So I feel like my relationship with my parents is like that. Like, they don't really understand what I'm doing, but they still support me, and um, yeah, I'm grateful that that's the case.
and when and where do you feel most at home?
Strangely, I think it's New York, like so far. I feel like even though I spend most of my time in China, when I'm in Guangdong with my parents, I feel very like restricted because first of all, I don't drive, and then when I'm at home, that it always need to if I want to go somewhere, then I kind of like always like travel with someone like a family member. Um, and then it's not easy to like go to places. And then there are not so many interesting places I want to go when I'm at home anyway. So even though like my hometown is my hometown, but I don't see myself kind of live there for a long time, and it's not the most comfortable environment for me. Um, and in Shanghai, I worked there for 5 years. Like I feel like I know the city like okay, but I don't feel very welcome there. Uh, as a person without a Shanghai 户口. um, yeah. So I feel like I'm still looking for a place that I I can stay longer, and so far I like New York. I'm not sure if I'm going to stay here forever or if I could. But yeah, this is a place I feel most comfortable with. Yeah.
Um, how do you identify yourself ethnically?
It's Chinese. It's
Yeah.
Cantonese. Okay.
And
Yeah.
what do you feel most proud of?
What I feel most proud of? That I made a decision to leave, I guess, like to move to New York. Yeah, because I feel like many people have the same idea that they're not happy with what's happening, maybe back in China, like when people want to run. But of course, it's not easy to do it, especially if you already have a successful career and family and your life back there. Um, I feel like at the time I had nothing to lose anyway, though. Like my career is not going anywhere in journalism, and I don't have kids, so like I can still move around. And, but yeah, I think I made the decision that I wanted to textile. I want to make it work and spend a year or two on it, and it worked out for me. So I'm very proud of myself for that part. Yeah.
And do you consider yourself like a Chinese or Asian artist as opposed to an international artist?
Uh, I can be both, right? Uh, yeah. Okay. Is it like a distinction, like a different category or something?
No, just like how do you identify yourself? It's more like an identity question.
Ah, okay. Uh, I think I would say definitely I'm not, like still a Chinese artist. Even though I feel like I wouldn't label myself too much as a Chinese artist, and I would almost avoid using some, like Chinese traditional elements in my work. Because I don't know, like first of all, I don't feel like very like that closely connected to traditional culture, even though like I grew up in China, like there's a lot of like folk religion, like art in my household going on. But I feel like in art making that it's almost a bit too trendy to use like the Chinese traditional elements. So I feel like I would like try to, at least for now, to use a more universal language, like human figures and stories that everyone could understand. Yeah.
Okay. And so I think in a documentary produced by Why Not, you describe yourself as like a virgin. I think I also saw your IG story about a virgin.
Mm,
And can you like elaborate on this a bit more?
mm. Yeah, the fortune cookie thing, it was because I took an elective at school to learn ceramics. And then, uh, yeah, it was just, I think it was just like I was watching videos on YouTube, like how to make fortune cookies at home. I forgot why I was doing that. And it was quite easy to do it, if you have a muffin tin, you have the dough, then you can just easily like fold it together and put it on top of a mug to fold it. And I was like, okay, I think I can do it with clay because the material is kind of similar. It's like making dumplings. And so that's how it started. Like so making these like bigger and smaller fortune cookies and fire them in the kiln. And I guess I was like uh, intrigued by the idea because as a new immigrant, like everything like that's Chinese American, it's very interesting to me. Like Chinatown, it's like oh, Cantonese bakeries, Cantonese restaurants. Um, it's like even though I speak Cantonese, but it's like a place that I'm not familiar with, like, because Shanghai was not like that, Guangdong was not like that. So it's like a very special space and culture that only exists in Chinese American communities here. So like fortune cookie is a thing that doesn't exist in Chinese restaurants back in China. But it's something special that um, it started from here. So I guess like yeah, I'm like as a new immigrant, I'm like, oh, how this happened? And yeah, I'm trying to see how it's possible to um, grow independently. Like my roots are from China, but how can I live after I uprooted myself from the original environment and still have a life and flourish here? Yeah, I think it's a metaphor.
Thank you. And what do you think is a way for Asian textile artists to have bigger impacts?
Mm. The question is like how can Asian American artists have better a bigger impact?
Um, it's like, is there any way for Asian textile artists or Chinese textile artists to have a bigger impact, whether it's like on social media or like just like
Mm,
for people to see like their works?
right. I think textile art in general is on the rise for many years. Like, because in the 60s when there was this fiber movement, that textile art was very new. It was very marginalized, and I feel like until recent years that people like see more contemporary artwork made by textile artists. And because it's tactile, it's like very like interesting texture and colors. You can make sculptures, you can make wearable arts, you can make clothes. I think it's getting more attention in general. And for Asian textile artists, I think it's because it's a long, like, strong textile culture and history in Asia, like in Japan, in China, Southeast Asia, in India. So I think like we have some advantage in a way that there's so many things that we can borrow from our own culture and history. Um, yeah, so I think it's there's like a strong group, I would say, like Asian American textile artists on the rise. Yeah.
Okay. And what advice would you give to an Asian who is new to the field of textile art?
I feel like I'm not in a position to give advice yet. Myself is still like asking advice from other people. I'm still like trying to see how it's going to work out for me. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And is there anything you would like to share that we haven't covered yet?
I think we covered most of it. Yeah.